2026 will not reward the loudest people. It will not reward the angriest voices, the fastest reactions, or the ones who feel the most. It will reward the ones who can stay calm while everything else accelerates. Because in a world that profits from your outrage, emotional control becomes power. And the people who master it will quietly rise while everyone else burns energy reacting to noise. This video is about why emotional control will matter more in 2026 than intelligence, talent, or motivation, and how the future is already selecting for those who can regulate themselves. Chapter 1. The New Pressure Era. The world did not suddenly become harder. It became faster. Faster than the nervous system was designed to handle, faster than reflection, faster than emotional recovery. And by 2026, this speed has stopped being temporary. It is now permanent. You wake up into it. You work inside it. You scroll through it. Every message, every notification, every demand arrives with urgency, as if everything matters equally and must be felt immediately. This is the new pressure era, and most people are still trying to survive it with outdated emotional habits. For most of human history, emotional reactions had time to settle. Conflict was slower. News traveled gradually. Mistakes faded quietly. Today, emotions are pulled out of you in real time, amplified, recorded, and often rewarded when they are extreme. Anger spreads faster than clarity. Fear travels further than reason. Outrage is no longer a side effect of modern life. It has become a business model. And the cost of participating unconsciously is higher than most people realize. In 2026, pressure no longer comes in waves. It comes as a constant background noise, a low hum of comparison, urgency, and expectation that never truly shuts off. Even moments that appear calm are often filled with anticipation, waiting for the next message, the next update, the next thing that demands a reaction. The human nervous system interprets this as danger, even when no physical threat exists. Over time, this creates emotional fatigue. People feel tense without knowing why, irritable without a clear cause, exhausted even after resting. This is not weakness. It is biology struggling to keep up with an environment it was never designed for. What makes this era different is not just the amount of pressure, but how personalized it has become. Algorithms learn what provokes you. Workplaces reward constant availability. Social systems subtly punish emotional neutrality. You are encouraged to react quickly, speak immediately, feel strongly, and move on without processing. Emotional control, once considered optional or even restrictive, is now the difference between stability and burnout, between clarity and chaos, between quiet progress and constant damage control. Most people respond to this pressure by trying to escape it. They distract themselves. They numb themselves. They tell themselves they just need a break. But pressure is no longer something you step away from and return refreshed. It follows you. It adapts. It waits. The real solution is not avoidance. It is regulation, the ability to remain internally steady while the external world accelerates. This is where emotional control stops being a personal development concept and becomes a survival skill. In previous eras, emotional reactions were often forgiven. A bad day stayed private. A mistake dissolved into memory. Today, reactions linger. Screenshots last. Words echo. One emotional moment can undo years of quiet discipline. One uncontrolled response can reshape how you are perceived, trusted, or dismissed. The margin for emotional error has narrowed, while the pressure to react has intensified. This imbalance is why emotional control will matter more in 2026 than it ever has before. But emotional control does not mean emotional suppression. It does not mean becoming cold, detached, or indifferent. It means understanding what you feel without being ruled by it. It means creating a pause between stimulus and response, even when the world is pushing you to react instantly. That pause is where power now lives. Not visible power, not loud power, quiet power. The kind that compounds over time while others burn energy reacting to every spark. The pressure era reveals something uncomfortable.
Many people believe they are making conscious choices when in reality they are being emotionally steered. Their mood is shaped by headlines. Their confidence rises and falls with feedback. Their decisions are subtly influenced by fear of missing out, fear of falling behind, fear of being misunderstood. In a slower world, this might have gone unnoticed. In a faster one, it becomes destructive. Emotional control is the skill that allows you to step out of this invisible current and choose your direction deliberately. As pressure increases, so does the gap between those who can regulate themselves and those who cannot. This gap shows up quietly at first, in who stays calm during conflict, in who thinks clearly under stress, in who is trusted with responsibility. Over time, it becomes obvious. One group feels constantly overwhelmed, always reacting, always catching up. The other appears grounded, focused, and strangely unshaken. The difference is not talent, it is not intelligence, it is emotional regulation under pressure. The new pressure era does not ask if you are skilled, it asks if you are stable. It does not test what you know, it tests how you respond when things do not go your way. In 2026, opportunity increasingly flows toward those who can remain composed while others lose control. This is not because the world is unfair, it is because composure has become rare, and rarity creates value. This chapter is not meant to alarm you, it is meant to orient you, to help you see the environment clearly instead of blaming yourself for struggling within it. The pressure you feel is real, but so is your ability to adapt. Emotional control is not about becoming less human, it is about becoming more intentional in a world designed to provoke you. And once you understand the nature of this pressure, you can stop fighting it blindly and start training for it intelligently. Because the world is not slowing down, and the people who learn to stay steady within it will quietly shape the future while others remain trapped in reaction.
Chapter 2. When Intelligence Fails Under Pressure. There is a quiet myth that has shaped modern ambition for decades, the belief that intelligence is enough, that if you are smart, informed, and capable, you will naturally rise. For a long time, this idea seemed true. Knowledge opened doors, skill created leverage. But in the pressure-heavy environment of 2026, intelligence alone is no longer the advantage people think it is. In fact, it often becomes irrelevant the moment emotion enters the room. You can know the right answer and still make the wrong move. You can understand the system and still sabotage yourself within it. This is not a contradiction, it is the reality of how the human mind works under stress. When emotional pressure rises, the part of the brain responsible for logic and long-term thinking begins to lose influence. Reaction takes over. Impulse fills the gap. Intelligence watches from the sidelines as emotion takes the wheel. This is why some of the most intelligent people feel stuck, frustrated, or chronically misunderstood. They see patterns others miss. They understand consequences in theory, yet in moments of tension, conflict, or uncertainty, they react just like everyone else. They speak too quickly. They defend instead of observe. They push when patience would have worked better. Their intelligence becomes a liability because it gives them confidence without control. Pressure exposes a truth most people avoid. Intelligence does not govern behavior. Emotion does. Intelligence suggests options. Emotion selects which one you take. Under calm conditions, the two can work together. Under pressure, emotion dominates. This is not a personal failure. It is a neurological reality. When stress hormones flood the body, survival mechanisms rise to the surface. The brain prioritizes speed over accuracy, certainty over nuance, immediate relief over long-term outcome. In earlier eras, this mismatch was less visible. Pressure was intermittent. Recovery was built into daily life. Today, pressure is constant. Decisions are made while emotionally taxed. Conversations happen while distracted. Judgments are formed while overstimulated. In this environment, intelligence without emotional control becomes unstable, like a powerful engine bolted onto a frame that cannot handle the speed. You see this everywhere. Talented professionals losing composure in meetings, smart individuals damaging relationships with a single emotional message, skilled leaders burning trust because they react defensively instead of listening.
These moments are rarely about lack of knowledge, they are about lack of regulation. The person knew better, they just could not access that knowledge in the moment it mattered. This is where emotional control becomes the multiplier, not because it replaces intelligence, but because it unlocks it. Emotional regulation creates the conditions where intelligence can function under pressure. It slows the internal noise enough for clarity to surface. It creates distance between stimulus and response. That distance may only last a few seconds, but those seconds change everything. Without emotional control, intelligence turns inward. It overanalyzes. It justifies reactions after the fact. It constructs explanations instead of solutions. People mistake this mental activity for thinking, when it is often just emotional processing in disguise. True thinking requires calm. It requires space. It requires the ability to tolerate discomfort without rushing to resolve it emotionally. The pressure era has revealed an uncomfortable pattern. Many high performers are not failing because they lack skill. They are failing because their emotional bandwidth is depleted. They are constantly managing stress, comparison, urgency, and expectation. By the time a real decision appears, their system is already overloaded. Intelligence cannot operate in a flooded system. It needs regulation to breathe. This is why emotional control will matter more in 2026 than raw intellect. The future favors those who can think clearly while others feel intensely, those who can pause while others react, those who can absorb pressure without leaking it into their behavior. These individuals appear steady, not because they feel less, but because they manage what they feel deliberately. Emotional control does not dull intelligence, it sharpens it. It allows insight to emerge instead of being buried under reaction. It allows strategy instead of impulse. It allows long-term positioning instead of short-term relief. In a world that constantly demands immediate response, the ability to wait becomes a form of dominance. The most dangerous misconception is that emotional control limits authenticity. In reality, uncontrolled emotion limits expression. It narrows your range. It locks you into predictable reactions. True authenticity requires choice, the freedom to respond in alignment with your values rather than your triggers. Intelligence provides understanding. Emotional control provides access to that understanding when it matters. As pressure increases, the world begins to separate people not by how smart they are, but by how they behave when things go wrong, when plans collapse, when criticism appears, when uncertainty stretches on longer than expected. In those moments, intelligence alone offers no protection. Regulation does. This chapter is not an argument against intelligence. It is a warning about its limits. Intelligence is a tool. Emotional control is the hand that holds it steady. Without that steadiness, even the sharpest mind cuts in the wrong direction. As we move forward, the question shifts. Not how smart are you, but how accessible is your intelligence under pressure. In the next chapter, we will explore why most people never notice the emotional triggers that disrupt that access, and how those unseen forces quietly dictate behavior long before logic ever arrives.
Chapter 3. The Invisible Triggers Running Your Life. Most emotional reactions do not announce themselves. They arrive quietly, already in motion, long before you realize a choice is being made. By the time you feel irritated, defensive, anxious, or rushed, the trigger has already done its work. This is what makes emotional triggers so powerful. They operate beneath awareness, shaping behavior while giving you the illusion of control. In the pressure-heavy world of 2026, these invisible triggers are everywhere, and they are rarely accidental. A trigger is not the event itself. It is the meaning your nervous system assigns to that event. Two people can experience the same situation and react completely differently. One stays calm, the other feels provoked. The difference is not personality, it is conditioning. Triggers are built through repetition. Experiences that once caused stress, embarrassment, rejection, or loss teach the nervous system to anticipate danger. Over time, the body reacts before the mind has a chance to evaluate whether the threat is real. This is why emotional reactions often feel automatic. A tone of voice, a delayed response, a vague comment, a public correction, a comparison you did not ask for.
These moments activate old patterns that were formed long before the present situation. In the past, this automation served a purpose. It helped humans survive genuine threats. In modern life, it creates unnecessary emotional volatility in environments that require clarity and composure. What makes 2026 different is the precision with which triggers are activated. Digital systems reward emotional engagement. The more you react, the more you are shown content designed to provoke similar reactions. Work environments push urgency and constant availability. Social spaces blur boundaries between personal identity and public perception. The result is a world that constantly presses on your emotional pressure points, often without your conscious consent. Most people believe their reactions are reasonable responses to the moment. They say they are reacting because something was unfair, disrespectful, or stressful. In reality, the intensity of the reaction is rarely about the present. It is about accumulated emotional memory. Triggers compress time. They pull unresolved past experiences into the now, making a minor event feel disproportionately significant. This is why reactions often feel justified in the moment and regrettable afterward. The danger of invisible triggers is not the emotion itself. Emotion is information. The danger is losing choice. When triggers run unnoticed, behavior becomes predictable. You speak before thinking. You withdraw when challenged. You escalate when patience would have served you better. Over time, these patterns shape how others experience you, not as intelligent or capable, but as reactive or unstable. This perception forms quietly and is difficult to reverse. Triggers also drain energy. Every emotional reaction consumes cognitive resources. The body prepares for action. The mind narrows focus. Recovery takes time even if you move on mentally. When triggers are frequent, the system never fully resets. People live in a low-grade state of emotional arousal, always slightly tense, slightly guarded, slightly tired. They mistake this state for normal, unaware that it is slowly eroding their ability to think clearly. Awareness is the first interruption. You cannot regulate what you do not notice. Emotional control begins by observing patterns without judgment, noticing what reliably provokes you. Certain people, certain situations, certain types of feedback, certain forms of uncertainty. These patterns are not flaws, they are maps. Each trigger points to a place where the nervous system learned to protect itself. This observation requires honesty. Many people avoid it because it challenges their self-image. They want to believe they are rational and measured. Seeing your own triggers can feel like discovering vulnerabilities you would rather ignore. But avoiding them does not make them disappear. It only allows them to operate in the dark. Once triggers are identified, their power begins to weaken. Not immediately, but gradually. The moment you can name what is happening, the reaction slows. A small gap appears. In that gap, choice becomes possible. You may still feel the emotion, but you are no longer fully inside it. This is the beginning of emotional regulation. Not suppression, not denial, awareness. In the pressure era, this awareness becomes a competitive advantage. While others are pulled into emotional loops, you begin to see the pattern forming. While others react, you recognize the trigger activating. This recognition does not make you immune, but it gives you time. Time to breathe, time to choose, time to respond instead of react. Triggers thrive on speed. They rely on immediate action. Slow the process, and their influence weakens. This is why emotional control is inseparable from pacing. Slowing your internal response even slightly changes the outcome. A delayed reply, a pause before speaking, a moment of silence. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of mastery. The world of 2026 will not become less triggering. It will become more efficient at provoking emotion. The question is not whether triggers exist, but whether they govern your behavior. Emotional control begins when you stop asking why the world feels overwhelming and start noticing what consistently pulls you out of center. This chapter is about reclaiming authorship over your reactions, about seeing the invisible mechanisms that have been shaping your behavior for years. As awareness deepens, regulation becomes possible. And as regulation strengthens, the illusion that emotion controls you begins to dissolve. In the next chapter, we will confront one of the most common misunderstandings of modern culture, the belief that emotional expression is the same as authenticity. Understanding why this idea is flawed is essential to developing real emotional control without losing yourself in the process.
Chapter 4. The Illusion of Authenticity. Modern culture praises emotional expression as truth. Say what you feel. React honestly. Do not hold back. This message is repeated so often that it has begun to feel unquestionable. By 2026, emotional expression is often treated as a moral virtue. The more openly someone reacts, the more authentic they are assumed to be. But this belief hides a dangerous misunderstanding. Unfiltered emotion is not the same as authenticity. In many cases, it is the opposite. Authenticity is not the absence of control. It is alignment. It is acting in accordance with your values rather than your impulses. When emotion bypasses intention, behavior becomes reactive, not real. The reaction may feel honest in the moment, but it is often driven by conditioning, fear, or unresolved pressure rather than deliberate choice. Calling this authenticity gives emotional impulses authority they do not deserve. The idea that emotional control suppresses the self has done significant damage. People are taught to fear restraint, as if pausing before responding means betrayal of identity. In reality, restraint is what allows identity to emerge clearly. Without it, behavior is dictated by whatever emotion happens to be loudest at the moment. That is not self-expression, that is automation. In the pressure era, this confusion is amplified. Platforms reward emotional intensity. Strong reactions generate attention. Attention generates validation. Over time, people learn that being emotionally reactive brings visibility. They confuse this visibility with truth. The result is a culture where expression is immediate and reflection is optional. Emotional leaks are celebrated as courage, even when they cause unnecessary damage. True authenticity requires awareness of internal states without surrendering to them. It means acknowledging emotion without letting it define the response. A person who pauses before speaking is not being dishonest. They are choosing coherence over chaos. They are allowing meaning to catch up with feeling. Uncontrolled emotion often feels powerful because it relieves tension. Speaking impulsively releases pressure. Reacting immediately provides a sense of relief, but relief is not resolution. The pressure returns, often stronger, because the underlying trigger remains unaddressed. Over time, this cycle trains people to react habitually, mistaking temporary emotional discharge for genuine expression. Emotional control interrupts this cycle. It does not deny emotion, it contains it long enough to be understood. This containment is often misunderstood as repression. Repression pushes emotion down and ignores it. Control brings emotion into awareness and decides how it will be expressed. The difference is subtle but critical. One avoids, the other chooses. In 2026, environments increasingly punish emotional leakage. Not openly, but structurally. Opportunities go to those who are stable under pressure. Trust accumulates around those who do not escalate. Leadership flows toward those who can absorb emotion without spreading it. Meanwhile, those who confuse reactivity with authenticity struggle to understand why they are overlooked despite being vocal, passionate, and engaged. The illusion of authenticity convinces people that any pause is inauthentic, that thinking before speaking is manipulation, that composure is coldness. This narrative serves systems that benefit from emotional volatility. A reactive population is easier to provoke, easier to distract, and easier to steer. Emotional control is quietly discouraged because it reduces predictability. Real authenticity is not loud. It is consistent. It shows up in behavior that remains aligned across situations. A person who is calm under pressure and thoughtful under stress is not hiding who they are. They are expressing a deeper level of self that is not hijacked by circumstance. When you act from emotional impulse, you often say things you do not fully mean. You make commitments you later regret.
You escalate conflicts that did not require escalation. Afterwards, you rationalize, you explain, you tell yourself you were just being real. Over time, this erodes self-trust. You stop believing your own words because they change with your mood. Emotional control rebuilds that trust. When you respond deliberately, your actions become reliable. You know that what you say reflects what you stand for, not just what you felt in a fleeting moment. This reliability becomes your internal anchor. It reduces anxiety because you are no longer bracing for the consequences of your own reactions. The most emotionally controlled individuals are not detached. They feel deeply. The difference is that they have trained themselves not to confuse intensity with importance. They can experience emotion fully without letting it dictate behavior. This creates a sense of quiet strength that others can feel, even if they cannot explain it. In the coming years, authenticity will be redefined, not as emotional exposure, but as emotional integrity. The ability to feel without spilling, to care without collapsing, to engage without losing center. This form of authenticity is rarer, more valuable, and far more sustainable. This chapter challenges a popular narrative because it must. Emotional control is not the enemy of truth, it is the guardian of it. Without control, expression becomes noise. With control, expression becomes intentional and meaningful. As we move forward, the focus shifts from internal clarity to external impact. In the next chapter, we will explore how emotional control quietly creates leverage in careers, relationships, and influence, and why calm individuals often gain power without ever seeking it.
Chapter 5. How Emotional Control Creates Leverage. Power rarely announces itself. In most cases, it reveals itself through subtle shifts in how people respond to you. Who listens when you speak? Who trusts you with responsibility? Who stays composed in your presence? Emotional control creates this quiet leverage not through dominance or force, but through stability in moments where others lose theirs. In 2026, this form of leverage has become one of the most valuable assets a person can possess. Leverage begins with predictability, not the kind that makes you boring, but the kind that makes you reliable. When people know you will not overreact, they feel safer engaging with you. They share information more freely. They take your perspective seriously. Emotional volatility, on the other hand, introduces risk. Others become cautious. They withhold. They manage you instead of collaborating with you. Over time, this difference compounds. Calm individuals change the emotional temperature of a room. When tension rises, they do not add to it, they absorb it. This absorption creates space for clarity. While others are reacting to the emotional current, the calm individual is observing it. They see what is actually happening beneath the noise. This vantage point allows them to respond strategically rather than emotionally. The response itself may be simple, but its timing and tone give it weight. In professional environments, emotional control signals competence more loudly than words. People assume that those who stay composed under pressure understand what they are doing. Even when this assumption is not fully accurate, perception shapes opportunity. Emotional control becomes a shortcut for trust. Leaders are chosen not because they know more, but because they handle uncertainty without spreading anxiety. This leverage extends into relationships. Emotional regulation reduces unnecessary conflict. It allows disagreements to remain focused on the issue rather than escalating into personal attacks. When one person stays centered, emotional spirals lose momentum. The conversation shifts. Resolution becomes possible. Over time, people gravitate toward those who make interactions feel stable rather than draining. Emotional control also creates leverage internally. When you are not consumed by reactive emotion, your energy is preserved. Decision-making becomes cleaner. Focus deepens. You are no longer spending mental resources recovering from emotional missteps. This internal leverage translates into consistency. Consistency builds momentum. Momentum compounds into results that appear effortless from the outside. The pressure era amplifies this effect.
As emotional volatility becomes more common, emotional stability becomes more noticeable. In environments filled with urgency, composure stands out. In conversations dominated by reaction, restraint feels authoritative. The calm person is not competing for attention, yet attention finds them. This dynamic is often misunderstood. People assume emotional control means disengagement or passivity. In reality, it allows for more precise action. When emotion is regulated, responses are sharper, boundaries are clearer, influence increases because behavior is intentional rather than reactive. Leverage emerges because emotional control changes how others position themselves around you. They defer without being asked. They seek input without being prompted. They listen more closely. This is not manipulation. It is the natural response to someone who remains grounded while others are pulled off center. In negotiations, emotional control prevents desperation from leaking. It allows silence to work. It prevents over-explaining. In conflict, it prevents escalation. In leadership, it prevents panic. Each of these moments adds to a reputation that cannot be manufactured. It is earned through repeated demonstration of steadiness. Emotional control also protects leverage by reducing self-sabotage. Many people undermine their own position through emotional expression that feels justified in the moment. A sharp comment, a defensive response, a visible frustration. These moments linger in memory far longer than the logic behind them. Emotional control removes these liabilities before they occur. The most effective individuals understand this intuitively. They do not seek emotional reactions because they understand the cost. They choose when to engage emotionally and when to remain neutral. This selectivity gives their emotion more impact when it is expressed. When a controlled person finally speaks with intensity, it carries weight because it is rare. This chapter is not about gaining power over others. It is about understanding how influence naturally flows toward those who regulate themselves. Emotional control aligns behavior with long-term outcomes rather than short-term relief. In a world that rewards immediate reaction, this alignment creates a quiet advantage. As pressure continues to increase, emotional control will separate those who manage chaos from those who amplify it. Leverage will increasingly belong to the regulated, not because they seek it, but because others place it in their hands. In the next chapter, we will explore the hidden cost of emotional loss of control, not the dramatic consequences, but the slow, compounding damage that most people never notice until it has already reshaped their trajectory.
Chapter 6. The Cost of Losing Emotional Control. Most people think the cost of losing emotional control is immediate and obvious. An argument, a mistake, an awkward moment they wish they could take back. What they fail to see is that the real cost is rarely dramatic. It is quiet. It accumulates slowly. It hides inside patterns that feel normal until one day the results become impossible to ignore. By the time most people notice the damage, it is already compounded. Emotional loss of control rarely ruins everything at once. It erodes trust in small increments, a reaction here, a defensive tone there, a moment of visible frustration that did not need to happen. Each instance seems minor on its own. Together, they shape how others experience you. Over time, people stop expecting clarity from you. They stop expecting steadiness. They begin to manage around your emotions instead of engaging with your ideas. This is one of the most expensive consequences of emotional reactivity. You may still be intelligent, you may still be capable, but you are no longer seen as stable. And in the pressure era, stability is currency. When people do not know which version of you they will encounter, they limit how much responsibility they give you. They share less. They involve you later. They quietly reduce your influence without ever explaining why. The cost also appears internally. Every emotional reaction leaves residue. Even when you move on mentally, the body remembers. Stress hormones take time to dissipate. Cognitive clarity does not return instantly. When emotional reactions are frequent, recovery overlaps. The system never fully resets. This creates a constant background fatigue that most people accept as normal adulthood. It is not normal. It is the result of unmanaged emotional expenditure.
This fatigue affects decision-making. When your emotional bandwidth is depleted, you default to the familiar. You avoid discomfort. You choose short-term relief over long-term positioning. You postpone difficult conversations. You rush decisions just to remove tension. These choices feel practical in the moment. Over time, they quietly lower the ceiling of your life. Emotional loss of control also distorts self-perception. When you react in ways that contradict your values, you explain it away. You justify. You rationalize. Eventually, you stop trusting yourself. You hesitate before speaking because you are unsure what will come out. You replay conversations in your head. You feel regret not because you were wrong, but because you were uncontrolled. This internal friction drains confidence. In relationships, the cost shows up as instability. People become cautious. They choose timing carefully. They avoid certain topics. They sense that emotions may escalate unpredictably. Even when affection remains, safety decreases. Without safety, depth becomes difficult. Emotional control is not about avoiding conflict. It is about creating an environment where conflict does not feel dangerous. Professionally, the cost compounds faster. One emotional misstep can undo months of quiet credibility. A single reactive email can reshape how you are perceived. A visible loss of composure in a critical moment can override years of consistent performance. This feels unfair, but it reflects how the human mind works. Emotional impressions linger longer than logical explanations. The pressure era amplifies this effect because mistakes are preserved, messages are saved, reactions are replayed, emotional moments are documented. There is no fading into obscurity. Losing control once may follow you longer than you expect. The cost is not punishment, it is memory. Perhaps the most subtle cost is opportunity loss. Opportunities often arrive quietly and disappear quickly. They require someone who can be trusted under uncertainty, someone who can handle ambiguity without panic, someone who does not turn pressure into drama. When you lose emotional control habitually, you are screened out before you ever knew the opportunity existed. Many people interpret this as bad luck. They believe they were overlooked arbitrarily. They assume the system is unfair. In reality, emotional behavior communicates constantly. Even when nothing is said, it is noticed. Emotional control signals readiness. Loss of control signals risk. This chapter is not meant to create fear. It is meant to create awareness. Emotional loss of control is costly not because emotion is bad, but because unmanaged emotion spreads. It affects perception. It affects energy. It affects trajectory. The good news is that costs can be reversed. Emotional control is not a personality trait you either have or lack. It is a skill. Like any skill, it strengthens with practice and weakens with neglect. The first step is recognizing the true price of ignoring it. As the world continues to accelerate, emotional mistakes become more expensive, not because people are harsher, but because systems move faster and remember longer. Those who fail to regulate themselves find that effort no longer produces proportional results. They work harder and feel stuck. The missing piece is not motivation, it is control. In the next chapter, we will shift from cost to capability. We will explore how emotional discipline is actually trained, not through willpower or suppression, but by building a stronger internal response system that holds steady even when pressure rises.
Chapter 7. Training Emotional Discipline. Emotional control is often misunderstood as a personality trait. Some people are calm, others are not. This belief keeps most people stuck because it turns emotional regulation into something you either have or lack. In reality, emotional discipline is trained. It is built through repetition, awareness, and nervous system conditioning. The people who remain composed under pressure are not born different. They have practiced different responses long enough for them to become automatic. Training emotional discipline does not begin with motivation. Motivation is unstable. It rises and falls with mood. Emotional control must work even when motivation disappears. This is why discipline begins in the body before it ever reaches the mind. Emotions are physical events. Heart rate increases, muscles tighten, breathing shortens. Before a thought forms, the body is already preparing to react. Regulation starts by interrupting this physical cascade. The first layer of emotional discipline is learning to slow the physiological response. This does not require deep analysis, it requires awareness and repetition. When pressure rises, the simplest signal you can control is breath. Slowing your breathing sends a message to the nervous system that the situation is survivable. This message reduces urgency. It creates a small gap between stimulus and response. That gap is the training ground. At first, the gap feels uncomfortable. The body wants resolution. It wants to act. It wants to release tension through expression. Holding that pause feels unnatural because reactivity has been practiced for years. Emotional discipline means staying in that discomfort without escaping it. Each time you do, you strengthen the system responsible for regulation. The second layer is cognitive delay. Emotional reactions gain power when they are acted on immediately. Discipline teaches you to delay interpretation. Instead of asking what this means about you, you ask what is actually happening. This shift moves attention from narrative to observation. It reduces personalization. It prevents emotional stories from escalating before facts are clear. This delay does not mean avoidance, it means sequencing. Feeling first, understanding second, responding third. Most people reverse this order. They respond before they understand. Emotional discipline restores the correct sequence. The third layer is exposure. Emotional discipline is not built in calm environments. It is built in moments of pressure. Avoiding triggers keeps them powerful. Controlled exposure weakens them. This means intentionally practicing regulation in small, manageable challenges, delaying a response, sitting with criticism without defending, allowing uncertainty without rushing to resolve it. Each exposure trains the nervous system to tolerate emotional intensity without collapse. Over time, the system learns that discomfort does not equal danger. This learning reduces reactivity automatically. What once triggered a strong response begins to feel neutral. Emotional discipline is not about fighting emotion. It is about retraining the system's interpretation of threat. Consistency matters more than intensity. Small acts of regulation practiced daily reshape behavior more effectively than dramatic efforts followed by long gaps. Emotional discipline is built quietly. No one sees the practice, they only see the result. Another critical component is recovery. Emotional discipline includes how quickly you return to baseline after stress. Many people judge themselves for emotional reactions and carry that judgment forward. This prolongs stress. Discipline means noticing the reaction, regulating it, and moving on without self-punishment. Recovery reinforces stability. As emotional discipline strengthens, identity shifts. You begin to see yourself as someone who can handle pressure. This identity reduces anticipatory anxiety. You no longer fear emotional situations because you trust your ability to navigate them. This trust compounds into confidence that does not depend on external validation. Training emotional discipline also requires environmental design. Reducing unnecessary emotional stimulation preserves bandwidth. Limiting constant input, creating boundaries around availability, protecting focus. Discipline is easier when the system is not constantly flooded. In 2026, emotional discipline will separate those who burn out from those who endure. The world will continue to provoke. Discipline allows you to remain selective. You choose where emotion is invested. You choose when to engage. This selectivity increases effectiveness. The goal of emotional discipline is not emotional numbness, it is emotional precision. Feeling fully without leaking unnecessarily, responding deliberately instead of habitually. This precision allows you to express emotion when it matters and remain neutral when it does not. This chapter marks a turning point. Until now, the focus has been understanding. Understanding pressure, understanding triggers, understanding cost. Now the focus is capability. Emotional discipline transforms knowledge into behavior. In the next chapter, we will explore what happens when you remain calm while others lose control, how emotional discipline changes group dynamics, how composure becomes authority without effort, and why being the calm presence in chaos quietly elevates your position without needing to prove anything.
Chapter 8. Staying Calm When Others Lose Control. Chaos has a sound. It shows up in raised voices, rushed decisions, emotional urgency, and the subtle pressure to react immediately. In moments like these, most people are pulled into the current without realizing it. Emotions spread quickly in groups. One person reacts, another amplifies. Soon the entire environment feels unstable. In this kind of atmosphere, calm becomes rare, and rarity creates gravity. Staying calm when others lose control is not passive. It is an active skill that requires awareness and restraint. Emotional energy moves socially. People unconsciously mirror the emotional states around them. When someone escalates, the default response is to match that intensity. Remaining calm breaks this pattern. It introduces a different frequency into the space. The shift may be subtle, but it is felt immediately. In group settings, emotional chaos seeks validation. Raised emotion is often a request, not a demand. It asks others to join. When no one mirrors it, the energy loses momentum. A calm presence deprives emotional escalation of fuel. This is why one regulated individual can stabilize an entire room without saying much at all. Calm changes perception. When tension rises and one person remains composed, attention shifts toward them, not because they demand it, but because stability attracts focus. Others instinctively look for cues. Who is steady? Who seems unaffected? Who is not rushing? Calm becomes a reference point. This reference point creates authority without assertion. People listen more closely. They weigh your words more carefully. They assume you see something they do not. This assumption is powerful. It places you in a position of influence without confrontation. Emotional discipline transforms presence into leadership. Staying calm does not mean agreeing. It does not mean absorbing disrespect. It means responding with clarity rather than emotion. Boundaries delivered calmly land harder than boundaries delivered emotionally. Emotion invites debate. Calm ends it. A steady tone communicates certainty. Certainty reduces resistance. In conflict, emotional escalation narrows perspective. People become focused on winning rather than resolving. Calm keeps perspective wide. It allows you to see what is actually at stake. Often, the real issue is not what is being argued, but how people feel unheard or threatened. Calm makes space for this recognition. When others lose control, they are often reacting to internal pressure rather than the immediate situation. Staying calm prevents you from taking on that pressure. It protects your internal state. This protection preserves energy and clarity. Over time, people learn that interacting with you does not increase stress. This reputation becomes valuable. In the pressure era, emotional containment is rare. Most people carry unresolved tension into every interaction. They are primed for reaction. A calm presence feels grounding. It lowers the emotional temperature simply by existing. This effect cannot be faked. It comes from genuine regulation. Calm also creates strategic advantage. While others are reacting, you are observing. While they are speaking, you are listening. While they are escalating, you are choosing. This delay provides information. You see patterns, you notice dynamics, you identify leverage points. By the time you speak, you are informed. Many people fear staying calm because they worry it will be perceived as indifference. In reality, calm is often perceived as confidence. Emotional reactivity signals insecurity. Calm signals control. The distinction matters more in 2026 than ever before. Staying calm also reduces regret. Emotional reactions create outcomes that cannot be undone. Calm responses rarely require repair. This reduces emotional debt. You move forward without needing to explain or apologize excessively. Your interactions remain clean. Over time, staying calm when others lose control reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who must defend or explain constantly. You become someone who responds selectively. This selectivity increases respect. This chapter is not about suppressing empathy. Calm does not mean coldness. It means not allowing others' emotions to dictate your behavior. You can acknowledge emotion without absorbing it. You can validate without escalating. In leadership, relationships, and negotiations, this skill compounds. People seek stability. They gravitate toward those who provide it. Emotional discipline allows you to become that anchor. As the world continues to intensify, moments of collective emotional loss of control will increase. Crises will feel urgent. Conversations will feel heated. Decisions will feel rushed. In these moments, the calm individual shapes the outcome simply by remaining steady. In the next chapter, we will confront the larger system behind this chaos, the ways modern environments intentionally provoke emotion for profit and control. Understanding this manipulation is essential to maintaining emotional sovereignty in a world that constantly tries to take it from you.
Chapter 9. Emotional Control in a Manipulative World. The modern world does not simply react to emotion, it actively seeks it. By 2026, emotional manipulation is no longer subtle or occasional, it is systemic. Platforms are engineered to provoke. Headlines are designed to inflame. Conversations are structured to polarize. The goal is not understanding, the goal is engagement. And engagement is driven by emotional reaction, not calm thought. This is the environment emotional control must operate within, not a neutral landscape, but one that constantly nudges, pulls, and pressures you toward predictable emotional states. Anger keeps you scrolling, fear keeps you attentive, outrage keeps you vocal. The system does not care what you feel, only that you feel strongly enough to stay involved. Most people believe they are choosing what upsets them. In reality, emotional attention is being guided. Algorithms learn your triggers. Content is tailored to provoke familiar reactions. The more you react, the more accurately the system learns how to pull you again. This creates a feedback loop where emotional reactivity is reinforced, normalized, and intensified. The danger is not exposure to information, it is loss of sovereignty. When external systems can reliably predict and influence your emotional state, your behavior becomes easier to steer. Decisions feel personal, but are often shaped by unseen incentives. Emotional control is what interrupts this process. In a manipulative world, emotional neutrality is an act of resistance. Choosing not to react deprives systems of the data they rely on. It breaks the loop. It restores agency. This does not require disengagement from reality. It requires selective engagement. You choose where emotion is invested rather than donating it to every provocation. Manipulation thrives on urgency. It pressures you to respond now, to share immediately, to take a side instantly. Emotional control introduces delay. Delay restores perspective. When you pause, the emotional charge weakens. What felt urgent begins to feel optional. This shift alone reduces susceptibility. Another manipulation tactic is moral pressure. You are encouraged to feel that not reacting emotionally means not caring, that calm equals complicity. This false equivalence pushes people into reactive expression under the guise of virtue. Emotional control allows you to care deeply without being coerced into performative outrage. In 2026, visibility is often mistaken for impact. Loud emotion creates noise, not necessarily change. Calm, deliberate action shapes outcomes. Those who regulate themselves can focus energy where it produces results, rather than dissipating it through endless reaction. Manipulative environments also exploit identity. Emotional triggers are tied to how you see yourself, beliefs, values, group affiliation. When identity is threatened, emotion spikes.
Emotional control does not require abandoning identity, it requires refusing to let identity be weaponized. This means noticing when content is designed to provoke rather than inform, when conversations are framed to divide rather than clarify, when urgency is manufactured. Awareness weakens manipulation, control completes the defense. Emotional sovereignty is the ability to choose your internal state regardless of external provocation. This sovereignty does not make you passive, it makes you deliberate. You engage when engagement aligns with your goals. You disengage when reaction would serve someone else's agenda. The most manipulated individuals believe they are the most informed. They consume constantly, they react frequently, they feel strongly. Meanwhile, their emotional state is being shaped moment by moment. Emotional control restores the ability to step back and see the structure behind the stimulus. This chapter is not about rejecting technology or isolating yourself. It is about reclaiming internal authorship, about recognizing that attention is valuable and emotion is currency. Spending it carelessly makes you exploitable. Those who maintain emotional control in a manipulative world become difficult to predict. Unpredictability reduces control. Systems cannot steer what they cannot anticipate. Calm individuals move differently. They respond slower. They think deeper. They choose selectively. This is why emotional control will matter more as manipulation becomes more refined. The calmer you remain, the less influence external systems have over your behavior. This independence creates clarity. Clarity enables intentional action. The future will reward those who can stay regulated without disengaging from reality, those who can observe without absorbing, who can care without reacting compulsively. Emotional control becomes the shield that allows participation without surrender. As we approach the final chapter, the picture becomes clear. Emotional control is not just a personal skill, it is a strategic advantage. It determines who is steered and who steers, who reacts and who chooses. In the next chapter, we will look ahead at how emotional regulation defines the individuals who quietly move ahead while others remain trapped in cycles of reaction. The future does not belong to the loudest or the angriest. It belongs to the regulated.
Chapter 10. The future belongs to the regulated. History rarely announces its turning points. Most shifts happen quietly, visible only in patterns long after they begin. The rise of emotional control as a defining advantage is one of those shifts. It does not arrive with fanfare. It reveals itself through who advances steadily while others remain stuck in cycles of reaction. By 2026, this divide is no longer subtle, it is structural. The future is not separating people by intelligence, talent, or effort alone. It is separating them by regulation, by who can remain centered when pressure intensifies, by who can think clearly while others feel overwhelmed. Emotional regulation has become the invisible line between those who shape outcomes and those who are shaped by them. In a world saturated with information, attention becomes scarce. In a world saturated with emotion, composure becomes rare. Rarity creates value. The regulated individual moves through chaos without being consumed by it. They do not withdraw, they do not disengage, they participate on their own terms. This ability changes how life unfolds. Decisions are made from clarity rather than urgency. Relationships are built on stability rather than volatility. Careers progress through trust rather than noise. These outcomes appear almost unfair to those who are constantly reacting, yet they are the natural result of internal order. The regulated person does not feel less, they feel more precisely. They experience emotion without becoming it. This precision allows them to respond in ways that align with long-term goals rather than momentary relief. Over time, this alignment compounds. Small, deliberate choices build momentum. Momentum becomes trajectory.
Many people will resist this reality. They will continue to believe that expression equals power and reaction equals authenticity. They will remain trapped in cycles of stimulation and exhaustion. They will work harder while feeling increasingly behind, not because they lack effort, but because effort without regulation leaks. The regulated individual leaks less. Energy is preserved, focus deepens, confidence stabilizes. This internal consistency creates external reliability. Others notice, opportunities follow, influence grows quietly. The future also belongs to the regulated because systems are becoming faster and less forgiving. Mistakes are documented, reactions are recorded. Emotional volatility leaves permanent traces. Regulation reduces risk. It prevents self-sabotage. It allows recovery before damage occurs. Emotional regulation is not about controlling others. It is about controlling the one variable you are always responsible for, yourself. This control does not limit freedom, it creates it. When you are no longer governed by impulse, choice expands. This is the paradox of emotional control. It feels restrictive at first. Pausing feels uncomfortable. Restraint feels unnatural. Over time, the opposite becomes true. Reactivity feels heavy. Regulation feels light. The effort required to maintain control decreases as the system adapts. Those who train this skill early gain a compounding advantage. They make fewer emotional mistakes. They recover faster when mistakes occur. They adapt without panic. They remain clear while others feel confused. The future does not require emotional detachment. It requires emotional maturity, the ability to feel without flooding, to engage without being hijacked, to stand in intensity without losing center. This maturity reshapes identity. You no longer see yourself as someone surviving the world. You become someone navigating it. Pressure no longer feels personal. It becomes information. Emotion becomes data rather than directive. The regulated individual becomes difficult to manipulate. They cannot be rushed easily. They cannot be provoked predictably. They cannot be steered without consent. This independence is rare and increasingly valuable. As you move forward from this point, the work continues quietly. Emotional regulation is not a destination, it is a practice, a daily commitment to awareness, pacing, and choice. Some days will be easier than others. Progress is not linear. What matters is direction. The future will reward those who choose control over chaos, those who understand that power no longer belongs to the loudest voice or the fastest reaction. It belongs to those who can pause, observe, and respond deliberately. Emotional control is not about becoming unfeeling, it is about becoming unshakable. In a world that constantly tries to pull you off center, the ability to remain grounded is the ultimate advantage. The future belongs to the regulated because they move forward while others remain stuck reacting to what has already passed.